Hey, what up, guys? It's Sick, and today we're going to talk about MQ2Bard, Bard, MQ2Bard. So, just like every time I do a class video, I talk about how this has been in the works for a long time, and we're so happy we're finally going to release the thing, and blah 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 blah. And there's a lot of reasons why Bard was the last one we were going to release. Some of it has to do with just support. We anticipate a lot of folks having a lot of thoughts and opinions about it just because of how unique of a class the Bard class is for EverQuest itself. Um, and it's a thing that really any group can benefit. Bards are such a great class. So it's going to be it's probably going to be pretty popular. Hopefully it means folks will roll bards if they've never tried them before, or maybe dust an old one off, or if they currently have a bard, they can see if this is useful for them. Folks are very passionate about their bards in what they should be doing and what they could be doing, and thoughts and opinions about how they work and all sorts of those things. As with any of the Chat with This Name class plugins, the intent behind the automation is to be pretty much out of the box, does the thing that it should be expected to do every time. That can sometimes be a little challenging for folks who maybe they main this particular class, or they've played one for 400,000 years, or maybe they sucked off fancy behind the bleachers once at a high school basketball game, or whatever. And so we kind of expect there to be a lot of hey, well, this is how I do it, or that's how I do this and that, which is totally okay. It's just very time consuming. So one of the things we wanted to do was put out Bard last. Bard also got delayed several times because of the suspensions and bans and all sorts of stuff, and it feels kind of shitty trying to celebrate something when all of that crap is happening, which nobody in the community wants and whatnot. And it feels a little, it's hard. It's hard trying to celebrate and have a good time on things when that kind of stuff is going. And we try to draw as little attention and be good neighbors in the EverQuest world as possible. This time around, we had decided earlier that we wanted to release it this year, and we didn't want to wait until the expansion or until after the expansion came out. So unfortunately, the timing is not super great, but here we are. We're going to release this because we're really excited about it. So let's go ahead and load this up for the first time. Just like with any of the Chat with This Name class plugins, we're just going to load it. You can just plug in Bard or MQ2Bard. We'll just do Bard here for easiness. It's going to pop up our MQ2Bard console thing. Let me close that. Remove this casty bar over here. I'll make this a little larger. So I'll go through kind of what we see in this window. We'll go through all the stuff, and then we'll go over to the browser, which I'm pointing to over there because that's where it is for me, even though for you it'll look like this. We'll go through this stuff. We'll go through some of the settings, and then we'll go through the commands and frequently asked questions and all of that jazz. So just like any of the Chat with This Name class plugins, when we load it up, it'll tell us about our clickies that we already have added, or some stuff that we automatically use. I'll show that real quickly. Here we go. Add clicky. So you see in our specials, we have a few specials down here. Do this. We have our epic, we have our breastplate. This tune in particular just has the Rapier of Somber Notes. We have a couple of other things in there also, which I don't have. So, it would show up here if we had them. You see the items I have added for burn, like Spirit Drinker's Coating, Rage of Rolfron, United Phoenix Feather, Horn of Unity. Defensive, my Valia's Unyielding Bravery. Downtime, my Veil, my Familiar, my Cloak, and my Mount. Now, these get added automatically. We're going to check to see what your best of any of these particular things are and add them for you if they're not already in there. We add all the mod rods, and then I also added my Phoenix Feather to Mana Group. Anyhow, so we see all this spit out. It'll tell us, we can do Bard help for a list of the commands, just like any of the other class plugins. We'll also see that here in the info tab. We'll have commands, we have our frequently asked questions, all the stuff you'd expect, spells and disks, type 3 augs missing. I've made a recent change to the way that the spell and disks work, where if you have it memorized, it's going to show green here. That way you can kind of pair up your type 3s. Like it says hi, and this is green. It means I have this currently in my loadout. It's currently in my spell bar, so that's probably something that I would probably want. But we'll go back to spells. We spit out all of our spells. Some of the groupings are pretty much how you would expect. Some other groupings might be a little unusual for folks, but I'll explain those. For example, we have 2 mez lines. We have Slumber and Lullaby. We'll use both of those if you're like BYOS or BYOS custom. If you have on use mez single target, we'll just, memorize the Slumber. We have 2 charms, voice and demand. Now those differ slightly. If you have use charm turned on, we actually don't memorize it in your loadout, but it is something that if you BYOS or BYOS custom, we will use either of those if you have them memorized. We have a bunch of other stuff. Things should be named in ways that made sense. I went back through and tried to change what we called them, which for some of them it was like whatever the TOV spell was for that time frame, we named the spell group. But instead, this is like demand charm. All of these charm lines are demand, voice charm, voice, AoE mez, single target mez, slumber, single target mez, lullaby. They pretty much make sense. War March and War Chorus. This is like your group buff or your AoE buff. And I have some notes in the frequently asked question about using those. Pulse Chorus, Cantana. That's like a lower level one, and it's important that it's separated out for that. The things that might get a little confusing for folks, if they're not super familiar with bards, is the insult line. You have a tier 3, a timer 3 and a timer 6, and you have a push and a non-push version of both of those. So you have insult T3, insult T3 push, insult T6, insult T6 push, and I'll explain why that's important in a little bit. There's some things in here that we don't actually use automatically. We just say you have it. And later on, we might add some things where you can call a usage of those things on demand. We have a few on-demand things in here, which is pretty cool. And we can just add this, like Fearless, we don't automatically use, but we can always add something so you would automatically use it. Then it says, our Epic, our Breastplate, and our Symphony of Battle item. Let's go over to our Settings tab. We have all of the normal stuff that you would expect. I'm not going to go over these things because they are in all the other videos and such, but all of these expect as you would imagine they work all the way up to use stick. So auto dismount through use stick. And then you get into the class-specific stuff itself for MQ2Bard. Auto Charm Immune. This is going to automatically add stuff to the Charm Immune list. So if it detects there is a resist by a whatever, it's going to put it on the Charm Immune list. Same thing with the Auto Mez Immune. It's going to go on the Auto Mez, the Mez Immunes. You can add and remove those by command or by using the interface itself. Then we have other stuff. Use Bladed Song. This is an AA. You can toggle it off if you're trying to, coordinate or manage buff slots. Buff slots isn't really as important these days with them increasing NPC debuff slot size, but the toggle's there just for raid purposes, and it's kind of a generic toggle off for debuff slots. Same thing with Cacophony. We have Use Charm. This says in here, use Voice Charm or Demand Charm does not auto-memorize, so this isn't going to change your loadout. We'll get to loadout as well. Then we have Deft Dance. We use that during a burn. Use dots. This does not change your loadout, so you can be in a loadout that has dots memorized and toggle off the usage of it. Like let's say you're doing an event and you need to stop, dots or whatever. You can turn that off. Use Funeral Dirge during AA during burn. Use Mez AoE. Use Mez single target. I normally roll with Mez single target turned off. Use nukes. Now, your nukes line, you have those T3, the timer 3 and timer 6 insults, which is the push and the non-push. And then you also have like the calling a burning call thing. You can use this if you BYOS or BYOS custom. This isn't something that I don't think in any level, in any loadout, we memorize it. So it's not really something that you should really care about. So this is primarily going to be, using those insults. It's not going to change your loadout, but it is going to change your usage of those things. Then we have Lyrical Prankster and Swarm Pet, which is the Song of Stone. Now, the reason why I kind of skipped that stuff in the middle real quick is to talk about, these both pop little Swarm Pet things, but they act differently. There's a note in the frequently asked question about them. So if you're like, hey, I'm popping like little gargoyles, that's your Song of Stone. If you're like, hey, I'm popping little dudes and they're doing some bullshit, that's your Lyrical Prankster. Use push insult. This is to determine if you want to use the ones that have push or the ones that don't have push. And so if you turn that off, you notice we're going to memorize 2 other spells here. And if I turn it on, we're going to memorize 2 other insults here. Again, insult, there's more stuff in the frequently asked questions. We'll go over that in a second. Use QuickTime. You can turn that on or off. There is /was/ a recurring /on and off /now and again / whenever it fucking feels like it. Typically on a Friday of a holiday weekend when you're going to get the most game time possible. There's a bug where QuickTime fucks up spell timers and locks your gems and causes everybody a whole bunch of grief. So I added the ability to not use QuickTime for that. QuickTime is important mention here because we do have 2 insults loaded. For them to reliably fire off both, you would want to be under the effects of QuickTime, just based on how we have our priority and the stuff we have in our loadout itself. Then you have Rallying Call and Rallying Solo. Rallying Call is the thing you put on other players that they get mana and endurance until they take an offensive action. And the Solo is the one you put on yourself. There's a note in the frequently asked question about those because we are not going to put anything in that says, if I am under the effects of Rallying Call or Rallying Solo, just let me stand there and die and don't do anything. We're not going to do that. But you can always use like an LEM if you wanted, or some such. These are adjustable, and I'll go over them when we get to the other items here. Then we have use silos. So for in game, this is like do you want to use your Silo Sonata AA, this guy right here, or not? And if you're lower level and you have like the Silo spell memorized, this would determine if you're going to use that spell or not. And then Swarm Pet, Song of Stone, like I said, and then Thousand Blades. This again allows you to turn that off. Some of these burn things are just the timers are semi-long, and you might want to be saving them for something specific or whatever. Trying to see Thousand Blades. This is a 33-minute disc, so. And it only lasts for a minute. So you might want to be using burn and all your regular burn stuff, but you might not want to actually use this until later. So this is going to allow you to turn that off if you don't want to use that. We typically approach things from a perspective of if it's like 10 minutes or more, consider putting a toggle in for purposes of people saving stuff but still wanting to do their other burn type stuff. So that being a 33-minute timer is one of the reasons for that. So left-hand side, we have here our modes, just like you would expect. This has all of the same class modes all the other classes have. Stickows, just like you would expect. Loadout, so we have 5 loadouts, 0 through 4. Melee dots, caster dots, and tank support. There's some notes in the frequently asked questions and commands and all of that jazz going over some of them, but I'll go over some of them briefly. So melee dots is typically what I run most of my bards in. My bards, well, I guess I have caster groups too, so I guess I do caster dots as well. But melee dots is going to load up my 4 dots, flame, frost, poison, and disease, as well as try to give buffs to the group being a melee group as it is. The same thing with caster dots. The caster dots is going to have your 4 dots up and try to give caster stuff. which I think is just swapping out Arcane Rhythm these days is like the only thing happening with that one, where melee dots is going to have Song of Suffering instead of Arcane Rhythm. Now, if you were going for like just melee, meaning you don't want to do the dots, we're going to get rid of some of those things and swap that around. We're going to add Arcane Rhythm, Spiteful, Crescendo, and Sonata. Same thing with Caster. If we're doing Caster, we're just going to be that I guess on this tier, that is the same, the Caster and the melee. Tank support's pretty neat. We have Requiem, Accelerando, and Reckless Renewal. I have some notes in the frequently asked questions and such for those things. Bards are really cool. They have a bunch of stuff people don't know too much about unless they're kind of deep diving. So like Reckless Renewal increases group chance to crit, heal, and crit hot. Requiem reduces magic and melee damage taken. And Accelerando reduces reuse timer on beneficial heals and decreases hate generation of those beneficial heals. So these just allow you to kind of be like a supporty person to help your, maybe you have this in a main tank group or maybe in an off tank group, and you need to kind of squeeze out any survivability you can. It's a good way to be able to do that without having to BYOS custom. The majority of my groups, even if they do have casters of some capacity, I just keep in melee dots because I typically have all of my casters meleeing anyway, so they're going to get the benefit from that. Epic. Epic has several options. We have Never, Burn, Combat, and Wait for Shaman Epic. Now, let's explain these. Never means don't use your Epic at all. Maybe you want to manually press it. Maybe you want to save it for something, whatever. Burn means if I'm burning. So if I am burn now, if I'm burn always, if I'm burn all named and fighting a named, this is actually usually here, or my the number of mobs I have on my AOE, my X target is the amount or greater than the burn count, then I'd be burning as well. And then there's Wait for Shaman, or there's Combat, which it's combat and not while meleeing, and that's important because the mob's incoming. We want to hit that to get that benefit rolling as soon as possible. And then Wait for Shaman Epic. This requires you to think ahead and, okay, does my shaman have an epic, and is my shaman going to use its epic? One of the things in the frequently asked questions is have you thought of X, Y, and Z for the plugins? And I'll read it. We'll go over it again in a bit, but it says chances are we have, and there are reasons why we're not doing it. Examples include, but not exhaustively, Wait for Shaman Epic. On Epic uses, should check if you have a shaman, right? That would make sense for Wait for Shaman Epic. Sure, that's true, but what if that shaman doesn't have an epic or isn't going to use it? Maybe you're just power leveling a shaman, or maybe whatever. And then what would it default to if we weren't using it? Right? Would it default to burn or combat or whatever the case? And like people are very passionate about, no, I shouldn't always use my epic, which somebody might think that that's silly. Somebody else might be very firmly in the camp of you should only use it while burning, or you should only use it when the shaman epic fires. And then when we eventually get actors implemented into the plugins, it may be something we're able to utilize to say, like, okay, has a shaman and it has a shaman epic. Maybe we'll be able to check on, hey, are they going to use their shaman epic in some capacity? We can ask them about that, and then maybe we'll be able to do something like that later. But for now, if you're not really sure what to do, I would suggest putting it on combat. Your epic is on a 3-minute recast. You should use this thing all the time. It's amazing. Then we have our regular stuff: auto assist, camp radius, chase distance, AoE count, burn count. These are all like the regular things. AA timer 1 endurance minimum. Now that looks really long and confusing, and oh my god, what am I supposed to do? The default, I think, is 30, and I defaulted at 30 because that's what I always had my KISS ionize set to, just like a good value, a good 30 value. This is set to 5, and your AA timer 1 is your boastful bellow, and your Vainglorious Shout. These two here. So Boastful Bellow does stuff to your individual target. Your Vainglorious Shout does a fucking huge cone. Where is it at? Within a 50-50... Why does it say 50-50? This game is amazing. But anyway, so it does a cone in front of you. So to be able to use this, you will want use AoE turned on, and then your AoE count set to something probably small. So let's say you just want it all the time, 24/7. You want to be using your Boastful Bellows and your Vainglorious Shout, because you can get a lot of damage by using both of them, because the timer on them, 12 seconds, is lower than the 18 seconds that it stays up, and you need to wait to make sure that the conclusion triggers, otherwise you don't get the big damage. Now, you cannot just wait for the buff to fade, because it takes, there's some measure of time between the buff disappearing on the mob and the conclusion actually hitting. And if you just instantly apply the next one before that conclusion hits, then you won't get that first conclusion at all, which is really stupid, in my personal opinion. But you can get a lot of damage if you were to turn on, use AoE, maybe crank down your AoE count to 1. This says if I have 1 or more mobs on my X target, do that. Or also, for in this purposes, it would be, do I have 1 or more in this cone that's in front of me? And we actually have some ways to test, what is in this cone, and does that mean it's going to put more on my X target than is already on my X target, or what my AoE count is designated for. Then we have Rallying Endurance. This is what I was talking about with Rallying Call and Rallying Solo. This is the endurance value that you want to use both of these at. I don't really plan on separating it from Call and Solo. It probably is just fine having them as singular rallying values for mana and endurance. We're only going to use Solo on ourselves, and Call only on other people, not ourselves. And then Reflexive. Reflexive is this guy. It's this little disc, timer 19, and this gives mana to your group. I think this is the default value of 40. Let's see, info, commands will be there. Spells, type, 3 augs missing, all that kind of stuff. Let's hop over to the browser and go through some of this stuff, because it's probably going to take a little bit to go through some of this stuff. So commands, we have all the stuff we would expect. I don't know why the formatting keeps taking away the space that I put between these. Need to clean that up too. Okay, so the slash commands work just like using the interface, except for you can do them by slash command, and they should all be functional. And if there, for any reason, any of them don't work or they do something weird, make sure to post in the thread and let us know. Loadout, like we went over, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Bard Epic, that says 4, but there's only 3. We have a couple of really neat what's called on-demand abilities. We have Bard DA and Bard AA Invis. So let me show you what that looks like. If I do Bard AA Invis and I hit this button, boom, we have now used our AA on-demand Shori's Sonorous Clouding. Now this is pretty cool on how this functions. It's going to prioritize doing that immediately. And then, because unless if we're in a camp or whatnot, we're not going to break Invis. An issue that I've had over the years before I started using MQ2Bard and putting in stuff for that was just the songs and shit breaking invis and deaths and all sorts of bullshit. But this is pretty amazing. So what on my driver, I just have a Bard invis button, and you can either dex your Bard with DanNet or BCT with EQBC, and tell your Bard specifically to do /Bard AA Invis, or you can do something like use your DanNet Bard group to say, hey, all the Bards, please do your AA Invis. The other one that we have is the DA. Now this has group DA. It also does single DA, but it's going to prioritize the group one first if for some reason you had both memorized. So it's not something we're going to use automatically because there's a long reuse on it. But it's going to be something that if you fire that command, if you say bard DA, which is, divine aura, right? If you're trying to do your bard invulnerability, we are going to say, stop everything else that we're doing and fire this thing. And that's assuming that it wasn't on cooldown. If for some reason it's on cooldown, we're not just going to hang around until it's back. But if it's not on cooldown, we are going to say like, hey, this thing is not on cooldown, stop everything else, and then cast this thing. And that'll just be for, if you're BYOS custom, you have some kind of, script event thing that you need to use Divine Aura for, you'll be able to do that. All right, let's get into the frequently asked questions. This will be a little bit here. How do I load the Bard window? It's Bard show, just like all the other class plugins. Does this work on all levels? Yep. What levels are these designed for? Well, they're designed from level 1 to current game. I have a note later about maybe I'm at a specific level that has a little niche to it, and maybe there's some stuff that's not added that I would like to be added or whatnot. You just post in the thread and give us that feedback. Not everything is going to be added all the time. Some stuff just doesn't make sense or fit into kind of the overall, larger view that we have for the class plugins itself. But we want to hear about pain points. We want to hear about stuff that makes your experience any better. If I have multiple tunes of the same class, do I need multiple licenses? Nope, it's one license, so one MQ2Bard license. You can use this on all your bards that you want on your computers that you are using. Blah 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 blah. I don't know what a slash command is. What is a slash command? A slash command is something like /who when you type / followed by other stuff. EQs made you use slash commands forever. And the interaction with MQ and MQ abilities all utilize slash commands as well. A slash command for MQ2Bard might be something like /bard help or /bard space camp radius space 40. Now the slash command for bard is /brd, the class short name, just like all the other class plugins. Or if you type BARD, that'll work as well. I added that just because out of habit of typing, short words forever. Same thing with monk. Monk has the same thing, MONK. I think it's actually faster for me to type MONK than it is for me to type MNK. Why am I not pulling mobs? We have the same stuff. Modes, says I need a mesh. Sometimes mobs keep hitting me, but I don't engage. This is if you're like in a tanking mode or whatever. It's almost always because the mob is actually outside of your camp radius. It's just able to reach on in and like hit you in the face. So you just need to increase your camp radius. How do I make it not do taunt and tanking stuff? This is obviously a generic thing. But if you don't want it to do like, tanky type stuff, meaning, grab a target and determine what it's going to do by its lonesome and stand in front of the mob and stuff, then you'll not want to be in a tank mode, etc. How do I ignore a mob? Bard ignore, again, general questions. How do we get it to break invis to do stuff? So we'll break an invis if a camp is set. So assist mode will break an invis, whereas manual mode would not. And if you want to break invis in a mode like chase assist, turn on use melee, use ranged. Again, that's a generic message. There's no use ranged option or use melee option for Bard. You're going to be meleeing all the time. Do I need to pause to invis or do anything special? Nope, not at all. Just Bard AA invis, and that's all you need to do. There's no pausing needed. In fact, my bards pretty much all the time stay in chase mode, or during raids and whatnot, that'd be in Vorpal mode because I want them to stand still. But for doing group and missions and stuff, they're in chase mode full time, and I manage having everybody invis, and then nobody does anything with invis unless I set a camp or I start fighting something and they have used melee on it, etc. I don't want to do anything if I have rallying solo. There's a typo there. And I don't want group members to do anything, ? We're not going to paralyze tunes when they have rallying solo or rallying call. Like I said, you could really use an LEM to pause or unpause the plugin if you really, really wanted to. I personally don't think there's a lot of value for that, at least for my use case. I don't think there's a lot of value for that. Rallying Call, Rallying Solo does have a long-ish reuse. It's the AA timer 11 here. It's like a 10-minute reuse. But hopefully, whatever amount of time that I use that, I'm going to get the value out of that and move on. I really don't want to stand still and do nothing. This is the obligatory, am the best bard in the world. I have a Fancy the Bard tattoo on my ass, and my personal motto is go, go, good team is my motto. Because oftentimes people who are very passionate repeat themselves a lot, like I find myself doing sometimes. If you have something useful to add that you can support with details and math, please post in the discussion thread. Keep in mind, as with all of the Chat with This Name class plugins, these are not how SICK or CWTN would manually play. These are intended to work with a very broad use case, mostly out of the box with minimal setup. We're certainly open to feedback and suggestions, but if you're looking for a very specific niche stuff, this isn't utility or tool for that. It's almost always a no, we have no plans on doing that until that changes. So don't be surprised at no. Yes, we've read all the guides you can point to. Yes, we understand that a manual player would do things differently. Yes, just sit back and relax, man. Just relax. How can I get it to break invis and do stuff? I already said that. Can MQ2Bard broadcast mezzing? Yep. Broadcast mezz on. This will automatically detect DANet, EQBC, and broadcast mezz usage. This is the same as MQ2 Enchanter or MQ2 Necro if for some reason you're mezzing with the Necro. I am below my nuke mana minimum, but I'm still using Burning Call. Well, Burning Call doesn't use mana, so you can use nuke off if you don't want to nuke. We also don't memorize Burning Call, so you can just unmemorize it. What's the deal with Swarm Pet and Lyrical Prankster? Swarm Pet is the Song of Stone. Lyrical Prankster is something different. You can turn them both off if you don't want either one of them. Amplification makes frenzied kicks go ham. Why no memorize? Well, you can BYOS and BYOS custom if you want to use amplification. We check amplification for normal usage, and then we also have some priority for it if frenzied kick is active because it makes your kicks go cray cray. But it's not something we have in any of our loadouts, at least at current level, like current game. I don't like the spell lineup. Well, some classes have loadouts, but you can bring your own spell. Bard BYOS on, and you can even do a custom BYOS, which will still do all of the buffing and put your gems back as they change and stuff. The only buffing spell gem that bards are going to do is your aura. There's no option to turn that off, and there's no option to make that the echo instead. It's just the aura. What is the deal with the loadouts? Well, these get stronger the closer you're to modern game, as many of the modern spell lines Bard use, you don't really get until the 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. Like, some stuff you don't get the first one until like 96, but it ends up being a fundamental ability that bards have, which is pretty frustrating. So the lower level you are, the less stuff you're going to see changed in the loadouts. You don't have all 4 of your dots, or 5 if you were to count like the lower level magic dot. What is our highest magic dot? 60 is our highest magic dot. Like, we don't start getting all of those until the 40s and 50s. So from the beginning to then, you don't even have any dots to be able to have a dot loadout. But in a current modern game, being able to have your dots up and do that stuff is pretty important. Let's see. I went over this a little bit. Raid MT group use tank support, uses Requiem, Accelerando, Surprise Sonata, and Reckless Renewal. Let's see. Raid group, caster group use caster dots for personal, caster for no dots. I use caster dots. I use melee dots. I don't know why there's like that typo there. I'll fix that. I'm using charm and I want to recharm the same mob. Well, good news, we already do that. If it's near us and it's alive, we're going to try to recharm it. So that's pretty cool. What is group DA? That's the Kazumi's Note of Preservation, temporary invulnerability for the group. If it's memorized by BYOS custom, you can force instant uses by Bard DA. The single DA is the Fermata of Preservation, temporarily gives personal invulnerability. If this is memorized by BYOS or BYOS custom, you can force instant usavi by Bard DA. So currently there's not like a different command for the group or for the individual. If for some reason we ever end up with some event where you would have both, I'll consider or we'll consider changing that. But in the meantime, we're just going to check if you have one of them memorized. If for some reason you have both of them memorized and it's not on cooldown, we're going to prioritize using the group one first. What happens if you have both group DA and single DA memorized? We'd use the group DA first. Yep. What's the deal with the insults and push insult? Insults are in 4 groups. There's timer 6 and timer 3 insults. And in those timer 6 and timer 3, some are push and some don't push. You can toggle if you want to use push or not, and then we will determine which of those 2 to use and then prioritize usage for the best of the selection. Now that's actually really important. Depending on what level you are and what level your spells are, sometimes your T3 might be higher level than your T6. So you'd want to use that more modern one that you probably match with your type 3 AUG, and it does more damage and all of that stuff, and lower priority on the lower level one. But if you're use push or not use push, the other might be true. So we take them and then we look at them and we say, well, which one is better? And then we're like, use this as insult 1 and use the other one as insult 2. Now, I need to add this here. So I mentioned earlier about, I have not memorized. I thought I typed this in here. Maybe I didn't. Oh, here we go. I have single target turned off, which means I memorized a second insult, but I don't think I'm using it. And you'll notice that you'll be able to get your second insult in during quick time. This goes a little bit to something down here. It says, does this use MQ2 twist or MQ2 melody? And that's melody, not melody, or EQ/melody. No, we actually use our own system, and everything is priority based. Where a manual player might end up skipping a buff for a certain amount of time to squeeze in another thing to do a thing, we have it set up on a priority. So we're not going to skip anything. We're going to try not to have any downtime on the stuff that is more important. And so for the purposes of the double insults, you'll probably only see double insults fire when you have your quick time up. Let's see. Vainglorious, Boastful Bellow, AA Timer 1. You will use Boastful Bellow and or Vainglorious all the way down to your AA Timer 1 endurance minimum. If you want to use both Boastful and Vainglorious, you would turn on Use AoE and adjust your AoE count. We will check the cone for Vainglorious and determine the amount of mobs inside the cone matches or greater than your AoE count. I read about a melody list where you can do X, Y, and Z. And this is what I mentioned before. We use a priority system to ensure we have as minimal downtime on buffs and such. We also don't use the EverQuest/melody system. We're going to try and keep our stuff up. Now, a manual player, they're going to have several different melodies that they do during different times to make sure that X, Y, and Z is happening. And sometimes that may be at the expense of the group or the raid itself, and sometimes that might be, at the expense of something else to get their extra thing in or whatever. And this goes back to that thing about manual play, and maybe not the way that Sick might do it if he was playing manually, or Chat might do it if he was playing manually, or you or whomever. So it goes back to this is automation, and it doesn't know what is happening next. It can't plan ahead like a player does, and it's not really supposed to. It has its priority system, and it's gonna try prioritizing those things that we think are more important first. For example, take Burning Call, right? Burning Call has no reuse time on it, and there's no mana cost on it. So if you had that as like the first priority, you would literally do nothing else other than Burning Call forever and ever and ever and ever, because other than GCD, you can just keep casting it. We're obviously not going to do that. One, it's kind of garbage. And two, we got other shit to do, man. We're busy. We got a full calendar. Let's see. I don't like the spell lineup. Well, you can BYOS if you don't like it, and You can put your stuff in there. Anything that the plugin says it uses, by and large, we should use. If there's anything that we don't, you can let us know. Some of the stuff that I mentioned are like disks and stuff. Fearless disk, for example, we don't use, but you can't memorize that because it's a disk and not a spell. So, does this swap instruments in and out? No, not at this time. And currently, we don't have any plans on doing that. And that's because the quote unquote modern game, all of your gear has your instruments on it. EQ is actually pretty fucking broken too, by the way. Chat found out that you can actually have spells that require you to be able to use a certain instrument that you can't actually get to skill yet because you're too low. So you actually can't even do it. But that's EverQuest for you. So that may change. We may decide to go back and do something like that, or maybe for Emu, we might do something like that. But as it is now, we don't really plan on swapping your stuff around. Have we thought of X, Y, and Z? I went over this earlier. Complicated song rotations, or like waiting for Shaman Epic and stuff. We obviously know those things exist. A good majority of things that people have been like, hey, I have a suggestion. It's very uncommon for it to be like, wow, that's something I didn't consider, but I should absolutely do that. It's pretty uncommon for that to be, because Chet and I spent a lot of time going through this thing and talking to people and reading people's opinions and guides and all of that kind of stuff. But it certainly does happen. So if you have an idea or you have something, let us know. But just know, like I mentioned earlier, the default is pretty much a no. We got a lot of really weird requests for stuff. I had a thing a long time ago that wanted MQ2 Monk to check if other monks are in the group and then coordinate with their times to automatically swap who was tanking and do like a feign death damage reduction rotation thing. And I was like, look, man, like I get what you're trying to do, but no, that's a lot of like not monking to do some bullshit that really doesn't apply to most people. So it's not worth anybody's time or effort or whatever. Now, if for some reason that became like what everybody did, everybody ran 3 monks in their group and that's what they did, sure, okay, we'll do that. But some of the niche stuff is pretty niche. So I sometimes get stuck in my spell book. I haven't seen this in forever, but I include it on anybody that has a spell book. It has to do with your like minimum and maximum background settings and whatnot. So I do recommend using Frame Limiter, but Frame Limiter does not work currently for the new EverQuest UI engine with regards to the interface itself. So you're not going to get a lot of the benefit that Frame Limiter does for performance and actually like performative value from it that you would if the new UI engine was turned off. I do recommend turning that off. The plugins themselves, we actually check to see what your minimum value is set, and we actually change it to have at least a 30 for your maximum background setting. And then the very last item on here is I need help. Well, located in the sticky linked at the top of the Frequently Asked Question on the RedGuides webpage. For the Frequently Asked Questions, you can find a link on how to request help. So that's like, discussion, chat with his name. So this is the sticky area, UI video. Are you doing XYZ class release schedule? I can't wait till remove that. And then getting started with the plugins. So this is the thing that has all of the stuff you should start first here every single time. Tells you how to go over the UI, talks about your class specific video, the hotkeys, moving tunes, some generic frequently asked questions, some other like guides and information on stuff here, info about like, how your camp works, your Z high and Z low, a reference chart that Ra drew for everybody there. But one of the things in here is how to ask for help. We'll do help, how to request help, right here, boom. So So that is that. This is the UI window as of, yesterday, today, or whatever. I'm not sure when the pre-release is going to go out, but we're going to do the same thing we normally do. We're going to do the pre-release. We do that for a few weeks before it goes for paid release. And hopefully any any breaking stuff we can get updated in the meantime. But folks will be able to check it out and enjoy playing their Bard for a little bit. We will do a giveaway the same as we do every year. I'm going to pretty much do the same thing that I did the last time with hiding the link that gives you instructions on what to do to get entered into the drawing. And that we'll put that ready to go when the pre-release goes up. So I'm gonna chop up this video, and then we'll get this posted, and hopefully we can get Bard rocking in the next few days. All right, guys, this is Sick, and I want to thank you so much for hanging out and checking out the video for Bard. And hopefully you guys will be able to check it out, and I will talk to you soon.